In the past 30 months, there's been 3 significant tax legislation. I think we're all familiar with the big one, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Recently, we have the CARES Act, but there's another act that was signed last year that probably a lot of you don't even realize that it could affect your retirement or devastate your overall legacy. If you don't know, stick around. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. We got a very exciting show for you today. My name's Joe Anderson. I'm a certified financial planner and president here at Peer Financial Advisors. In the show, of course, would not be the show without the big man, Big Al Clopine. He's sitting right over there. And so when you look at taxes, we haven't seen this much tax legislation in 30 years, since the Reagan era. So what we're talking about basically is looking at the Secure Act. The Secure Act was signed in December of this year. That affects retirement plans, that affects your legacy. That's today's financial focus. We're talking about the Secure Act, and the main reason why the Secure Act was signed is because people need help with overall retirement plans.
Yeah, and it was actually last year. We're not at December yet.
We're not at December yet.
Not
I
yet.
want this year to be over with so bad.
I know it.
Just like it's like, can we get to 2021? Just let's get there fast. No, it was signed last year, December of last year. Sorry, but what the heck is the Secure Act? It's securing every community's retirement act, I think is the acronym. In my personal opinion, I think it wasn't a great act at all. I think it hurt a lot of people more than help. But here was the overall theme of it. It was baby boomers, right? 24% of baby boomers have less than $5,000 saved, right? That's not very good. And then you look 2/3 or 2 and 3 baby boomers, they're already thinking, hey, there's no way I can retire at a normal retirement age. I'm gonna have to work until 70, 75, 80. Also, the push of life expectancy is also helping people work a little bit longer. So there's some nuances within the Secure Act that I think we all should know, because some of it will help us, but I think the big component to pay for all of it will hurt us more. Let's break it down. Let's bring in the big man right now, Big Al Clopine.
We'll get into the more significant changes. The first couple relate to your IRA with regards to your required minimum distribution. So that got moved up from 70.5 to 72. A few different nuances there, so we want to talk about that. The age restriction on contributing to IRAs, they took that away, so any age you can contribute. The Stretch IRA, that's probably the one that's going to hurt a lot of us, so we'll spend a lot of time on that. And then there were a few changes in 401k plans that actually will help us a little bit. So Joe, you're right, it's kind of a mixed bag. I mean, there were some good things and some things that really weren't as good, but I think a lot of people don't really know what the changes are because it was sandwiched between those 2 other laws, as you said.
Right, well, yeah, it passed, in the middle or late December. Right, and it's the holidays and everything else, and then you have January, February, and then we get hit with the pandemic, and then it's like, what Secure Act?
Yeah, right. We kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, what does that actually mean? And so, breaking things down here, there's certain ages that all of us really need to pay attention to in regards to certain rules and restrictions in regards to retirement plans. 59.5, of course, that's when you can start drawing money from your retirement account without the 10% penalty. There's ways around this using a 72T tax election. I'm not going to bore you there. 62, Al, you're pretty close there, right, bud?
I think I made it.
So what 62 have to do with anything?
Well, that's the first age that you can actually collect Social Security. But you don't necessarily want to collect it then because it'll be over 25% lower than what your full retirement age is. Realize full retirement age is anywhere between age 66 and 67, depending upon when you were born. 70, that's the last age to collect Social Security. There's no reason to wait any longer because it doesn't grow anymore after that point. And then 70.5 used to be required minimum distribution age. With the Secure Act, Joe, now it's age 72.
So yeah, that's the biggest change here, right? So they pushed it out a year and a half. I mean, wow. All right. Thank you very much.
And we're doing a whole show on this, right?
We're doing a whole show.
Guess what? It's that good.
70 and a half turned to 72. And we still got some time to go here.
Let's see, what else are we going to talk about?
But you got to take a look, though, because what is a required minimum distribution, first of all, and why did it come about? Is that once you reach that age now 72, is that you have dollars in a retirement account that needs to be pulled out. And why does the IRS want us to pull the dollars out? Is so they can get their tax money. Every dollar that comes out of a 401k plan is subject to ordinary income tax. So you let all the money defer, and then once you reach a certain age, they're saying, okay, now it's time to take the money out. And each year as you age, you have to pull more dollars out. So instead of 70 and a half, they said, hey, let's push it to age 72. But it's funny, the CARES Act, so we're talking about the Secure Act, but the CARES Act came in and they said, guess what? You don't have to take a required minimum distribution this year if you don't need it. So they're trying to save some taxes on some individuals to say, hey, if you pull those dollars out, you're going to be subject to income tax. Well, we're in a pandemic, so you don't have to. But Al, most of the people that take required distributions, they spend it anyway. Right. So it didn't really matter.
No, it really only affected the people that probably have the most money. But here's an idea for you. If you didn't take your required minimum distribution because you didn't have to, then why not consider doing a Roth conversion with the same amount that you would have taken a required minimum distribution with? Say it was $10,000, $20,000, whatever. Get that money to a Roth IRA. You were expecting to pay taxes on that anyway. Why don't you just transfer that right into your IRA, a Roth IRA, from your IRA 401k. You will pay tax on that, but then you get some money into a Roth and get some tax-free growth started. I think that's a great strategy for a lot of people.
No, absolutely, because you cannot convert an RMD. So if you have a required minimum distribution, and let me just give you a quick example here. Let's see if you have $100,000, you turn that age 72, and so here's a factor that you would have to divide it by. So it's roughly about 4%, 3.5%. So you would roughly need to take out about $4,000 out of this $100,000. So you're used to taking the required distribution anyway and paying the tax on it. What we're suggesting is that, hey, if you have to take the $4,000 out, or you're used to taking the $4,000 out and paying tax on it, take that $4,000 and convert it. Now you can convert a required distribution, or the distribution that you would have had taken, now that you can put that directly into the Roth IRA, because there is no RMD this year. So a couple of different things. If you've already taken your required minimum distribution, you could put it back. So they just passed that. They put an amendment in the CARES Act just a little bit ago. So if you've already taken it, paid the tax on it, you're like, you know what, I don't want to pay the tax, I don't necessarily need the cash, you could put it back into the IRA. No harm, no foul, no matter when they took the RMD yet this year.
Yeah, that is true, Joe. And one more thing I want to mention is the age that you can actually do an IRA contribution used to end at 70 and a half. Now it's unlimited. So you could actually be 95 years old and still do a contribution, as long as you have earned income or your spouse has earned income. So that's another thing that passed with the Secure Act.
Yeah, huge. Because the people now have to work until 90, Al.
That's why they did it, right? It's like,
so, I'm going to put a couple of bucks.
I'm 85. A couple more years.
I think it's cool on the Roth side, though, because a Roth is a really good wealth transfer play. The regular IRA is not, and it just got a lot worse. When we get back from the break, I'll explain it. We'll break it down. The Stretch IRA is no longer stretchable. So what does that mean to you and your family? Stick around. We'll tell you when we get back from the break. We have a tax planning guide that's going to bust everything out for you, too. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that special offer, and you can get the guide to tax planning right in your inbox. We'll be back in a second. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joey Anderson, Big Al Clopine. We're hanging out talking about the Secure Act. And this segment, we're going to talk about the death of the Stretch IRA. But before we go to the funeral, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
If I already took my required minimum distribution from my IRA in 2020 by mistake, I can undo it without tax or penalty. And that's a true statement. In fact, you can do that all the way up until August 31st, because remember, with the CARES Act, you do not have to take a required minimum distribution for this year. even if you have an inherited IRA, you do not have to take that distribution. You can put it back into the IRA by August 31st, no harm, no foul. But it's confusing, Joe, because that's a change in the rule. So if you read some earlier articles or even listened to us a couple months ago, it was different.
Right, yeah, they just changed that. If it was a 60-day rollover rule where you had 60 days to put it back in, or you could use a CRD, or coronavirus-related distribution, to put it back in the overall account. But now they said, you know, let's just kind of waive it all, and you could put it all back in. So let's kind of switch gears, Al. I want to talk about a beneficiary IRA, and what is it, and how is that going to affect us? It doesn't affect a lot of people, to be honest with you, because the average balance of a retirement account is fairly low. But for people that have accumulated some assets in a retirement account, this is kind of a big deal. So if you inherit a retirement account, or if you're looking to pass a retirement account on to your kids or your grandkids, a non-spouse beneficiary, is that before they could stretch out the tax payments, because everything in a retirement account, remember, is taxable. So once you receive that income, it's going to be taxed at ordinary income rates, but it would be at the child's rate. Before, they could stretch that tax out over their life expectancy. Now the rules change. So let's say a 30-year-old inherited a retirement account, they could stretch the tax out over like 50 years. Now it's 10 years. So they want all of that money in a retirement account to get pushed out within 10 years or 5 years, really depending on how that beneficiary designation is set up, Al. So this is kind of a big deal.
Well, it is, Joe. And you know, when you think about it, so now we got this new 10-year rule. And how does that work? And what's one of the things that's a little bit different is you don't have to take a required minimum distribution each year. You have some choices, but Joe, by 10 years, it needs to be all out of the account one way or another.
So a lot of people will probably just try to even out their tax bill. Maybe they take out $50,000 per year over a 10-year time period, or maybe they're working when they inherit that so they can have a little bit of flexibility. So maybe for the first 5 years, they're working, then they're retired, then they start distributing it out. There's all sorts of different combinations that you can do, but just realize that there's a 10-year rule. And if I'm a betting man, right, this 10-year rule is probably going to go to 5 years.
It could. You're absolutely right. So I think that's a good point, Joe, really, which is it gives you more flexibility. And I think a key thing is if you're still working or you have a high income year, don't take your required minimum distribution that year. Just push it to another year. But there's certain people that are actually exempt from this rule. And I'll start with spouses. So this is for non-spousal beneficiaries. So that's like your kids and grandkids. If you're disabled or chronically ill, if you're within 10 years of the person that passed away, and then finally, it's for minor children, but only until they reach the age of majority. So Joe, I can't give my IRA to you because you can't stretch it because you're more than 10 years younger than me.
Was that trying to be a joke there?
I guess. Very poor.
That was very well executed. Very well executed.
It's because I forgot what I was saying halfway through.
Let's go back in history, Al. All right, so 1980. So the 401ks and IRAs came about basically under the law of ERISA in 74 when it was signed. That's when IRAs, 401ks came a couple of years later. So if we go to 1980, let's say if you have a family, the average median income, their tax rate was roughly 45%. Okay, if you look today, it's 12%. So when these plans came around, when people saved money into them, they had a very good tax deduction, and it encouraged the IRS or the government encouraged people to save into these plans, right? Because today it's 12% for a family of four, let's say a husband and wife with a couple of kids, right? Before, in 1980, when we're saving all this money into them, you could save 45% on the dollar. Now you're saving 12%. The top marginal rate back then was also very high.
It was 70%.
70%, 70, right? So that's what the highest payers, today it's 37, right? So what's my point? The point is this, is that now we've accumulated a lot of dollars in retirement accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, TSPs, right? Because a lot of individuals, because the most of the money that is in these tax-deferred accounts or these retirement accounts are the baby boomers. All of you watching this morning. And now you've accumulated this money, you got a good tax break, but they'll say you'll be in a lot lower tax break or tax bracket in the future. All right, well, where are tax rates going? They were going down, they were trending down. We have trillions of dollars of relief that is going into the overall economy in regards to the CARES Act, and there's probably another bill that will be signed here shortly with another $1 trillion to $3 trillion going in. Where do you think tax rates are going to go? So if I have a lot of money sitting in these tax-deferred accounts that are going to be subject to ordinary income tax, maybe I'm not going to deplete the entire account before I die, then the kids will benefit, right? They'll get some assets, but they're going to get creamed in taxes because all of this will have to be distributed out in a lot shorter time period that will pop them up into a higher bracket. So what are some ideas and strategies that you might want to take a look at? Well, if tax rates are at all-time lows, just understand where you fall. What is your taxable income, right? And then maybe you max out your bracket each year. And how do you increase your overall income? Is by taking money out of a tax-deferred account. So if I take money out of a tax-deferred account, it creates income. But if I can pay taxes at a lot lower rate, it might behoove me to do this. But where do I put it? So I want to take some distributions out here. I know I have to pay the tax later, or my kids are going to have to pay the tax. What should I do with the money? Well, it might make sense to put it up here into a tax-free account such as a Roth IRA. I know if you've watched the show once, it kind of seems like the same show every week, because we talk about this because it is such a key component to, I think, an overall well tax strategy. You are taking the unknown out of existence by putting it up here and to have forever tax-free growth. So I think with the elimination of the stretch, the fact that a lot of retirees have most of their liquid assets here, Al, in this, right, it's that big. We need to get this thing that big, right? Let's move that up. Right?
Yeah, we want that one.
We want this one big, but it's all right here. There's $24 trillion sitting in these accounts, and there's a few dollars sitting here.
Yeah, we like, Joe, we like to call that tax diversification, which just simply means you got money in all three pools, and then you can control your taxes better in retirement. Joe, it's a much better way to save money in taxes throughout the rest of your life.
So there's going to be a turning point here where you want to look at where your money's held, how diversified are you, and do you have the appropriate strategy for your specific situation. We have a tax guide. That's our special gift for you today. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that tax guide. It will give you specific ideas and strategies about your specific situation to hopefully put yourself in a lot better position. We got to take another break. Don't go anywhere, folks. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson here. I'm a certified financial planner with Alan Clopine. Of course, he's a CPA. We're talking about the Secure Act today. What you need to know and what planning opportunities arise. We also have that tax planning guide. If you want to go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, you can click on that as well. Before we get to the meat of this segment, let's see how you did on that true-false question.
There is no required minimum distribution for a beneficiary Roth IRA because there are no income taxes due upon withdrawal. That's false. I wish that were true because that would mean you could let the money grow in the Roth IRA for decade after decade, century after century. No, you have to take money out. Required minimum distributions are required for Roth IRAs, beneficiary Roth IRAs, but there is no tax to pay. So, Joe, that's at least one good thing.
Yeah, you got to be careful because there is no required distribution in a Roth IRA. So if I'm an owner of a Roth IRA, I turn 72, I do not have to take money out of the account. But once I pass away and it goes to the next beneficiary or non-spouse beneficiary, well, there really is no RMDs anymore because they have to get pulled out within 10 years. But those distributions would be tax-free. If you already have inherited a retirement account, you could still, you're grandfathered in. You would still be able to take the required minimum distribution based on your life expectancy. So there are a few more changes that happen, Al, with the Secure Act in regards to 401k plans and things like that.
Yeah, and I think, Joe, maybe one of the main things is that part-time employees that work at least 500 hours for 3 consecutive years, they will now qualify for a 401k plan, so they can start getting some money in. And probably there's going to be a few more 401k plans because there's some tax credits for employers to establish new plans. Plus, they may be a little bit cheaper because there's these multi-employer plans that may reduce the cost.
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at a lot of employers, setting up a 401k plan, believe it or not, is super expensive. There's legal cost, it's depending on the size of the employer. Even small employers, it's like, man, if I set up a 401k plan, there's a lot of money that's coming out of me. There's fiduciary responsibilities that maybe I don't want to have. So a lot of small businesses don't offer a 401k plan. And Al, we've talked about this in the past, is that, let's say if I work for an employer that has a 401k and Al does not, and we have the same income, same age, you fast forward 10, 20 years, I almost guarantee you that I will have more money saved for my retirement just because of the ease for me to save inside of a 401k plan. So a lot of this is really good news for some employees that will get access to funds in that retirement account.
Well, I think so too, Joe. And plus, there's a couple more things too. Like for example, there's going to be a little bit better auto enrollment. They'll actually be able to do higher amounts, which means more of us will save because we have to. You can always opt out, but we know with auto enrollment plans, more is saved. And then finally, employers can actually set up a plan all the way up to the filing date of their tax return. That's a new thing.
Very, very good. So if you want more information on the CARES Act, the Secure Act, all that other good stuff, you can go to our website, yourmoneyyourwealth.com. We have a tax planning guide that kind of breaks everything down and then gives you some ideas and strategies given your specific situation. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's go to Ask the Experts.
This is from Mary in Leucadia. I'd like to retire next year at age 56, but I'm concerned that the tax penalty will eat away at my retirement account. Any suggestions? Joe, what suggestions do you have for her?
Well, as long as she's separated from service from her employer at age 55, and it looks like she's 56, there is no 10% penalty. So just understand, if you separate from service from an employer and you keep the money in a 401k plan, there's no 10% penalty taking those dollars out. I think 59.5 is ingrained from anyone. All right, well, no, I can't touch this until 59.5. That's not the case with an employer-sponsored plan, as long as you separate from service at 55. Do not roll those dollars into an IRA. Keep them in the 401k, and you would avoid any penalties whatsoever.
Yeah, and also there's a 72T election. If it's in an IRA, you can get the funds without penalty, but it's complicated and there's some restrictions there. I'm 46 and I want to start doing Roth conversions. Should I wait until I retire to avoid paying higher taxes, or are there issues in putting it off? This is from Eric in San Marcos. Joe, I'll start. And for Eric, it really depends upon your tax bracket now and in the future. Realize Roth conversions are available currently and tax rates are low. We don't know if both those things are going to be true in the future, so there's no time like the present unless you're in a really high tax bracket. So we need a little bit more information to answer the question accurately, but I think everyone should be considering a Roth conversion right now. Whether everyone should actually make one is a whole different matter.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Al. I think everyone should take a look at it to see if it makes sense. So if you're 46, you've got several years, depending on how much money that you have in the retirement account, right? When is your retirement date? If you're not retiring for 65, waiting that long, who knows if we'll be able to do a Roth conversion, and who knows where tax rates are going to be. So I would start taking a look at a strategic tax plan now and making sure that you're set up appropriately every single year. So thanks a lot for the question. Bring your questions in. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. And for the pure takeaways today, Just remember, required minimum distributions got pushed to age 72. If you want to make an IRA contribution, you can make it at any age. If you're going to continue to work like Big Al until his 80s and 90s, you can continue to save into your retirement account. The big one is the repeal of the Stretch IRA. So when you pass away, your non-spouse beneficiaries won't be able to stretch out that tax liability over their lifetime. They will have to distribute those accounts out very quickly. And then changes in 401ks. Good news is that a lot of smaller employers have an ability to give those 401k plans out to their employees at a much lower cost. So that's it for us today. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Hopefully you learned a couple of nuggets. And if you want more information, you can always go to yourmoneywealth.com. Click on that special offer this week. It's our tax planning guide. Everything we talked about gets you some more detail. So go to yourmoneywealth.com. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us today.